In 5 years, Russia's economy will have gone through a huge change, with big changes in how people buy things and how brands are seen. It's interesting to see how global brands like Adidas are dealing with the fallout from recent political unrest. Their fates are very much tied to Russia's economic future. The fact that well-known brands like Nike and H&M aren't in Russian stores shows how many foreign businesses have left, leaving a hole in the retail sector. At the same time, state-approved replacements, like Uncle Vanya's, start to appear, trying to fill the gap left by giants who have left. But will that impact the Russian economy in the coming years? We'll explore that in today's video. For nearly 20 years, Russia has steadily been emerging from the economic pit it found itself in after the Cold War. Suddenly, it plummeted back into that abyss, but the extent of Russia's future troubles may come as a surprise to some. While Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in 2022, preparations started long before, following the initial sanctions in 2014 over Crimea. Over the years, Russia amassed a hefty reserve of $600 billion, aiming to cushion the impact of any future sanctions due to military actions. But almost instantly, half of that reserve vanished under the weight of unprecedented sanctions. Putin had a plan to utilize these funds to stabilize the economy during conflicts, but the West countered by freezing all access to these reserves. Truthfully, Putin had no idea the West would come together so quickly, and he certainly didn't think Western nations would be prepared to put themselves in harm's way in order to censure Russia. Due to the United States' heavy hand in pressuring Russia, international sanctions were relatively low when Putin seized Crimea in 2014. Few could have predicted that such a strong reaction would follow a broader invasion. Russia had to resort to drastic measures to save its economy, as it couldn't access its war chest. First, it announced that its stock market would be closed for weeks, albeit initially it was just for a few days. After investors' concerns about selling all their assets were allayed, the Russian stock market reopened at the end of March. Furthermore, Russia's central bank implemented a staggering 20% increase in interest rates to counteract the ruble's sharp decline, which plummeted by up to 40% following the invasion. Despite this effort, inflation soared to 16.7% in March, a stark comparison to the US's 8.54%. Even prior to the Ukraine invasion, Russia faced significant economic challenges. Between 2015 and 2016, it grappled with a crisis triggered by plummeting oil prices and international sanctions. Unlike other economies, Russia heavily relies on oil and gas, comprising 40% of state revenue and 60% of its GDP, according to the Natural Resources and Environment Ministry. Russia's enormous territory is home to some of the greatest mineral, oil, and gas reserves in the world, all of which are essential to contemporary industry. Russia's economic dependence on oil and gas resources is evident, as these resources account for 40% of its export earnings. For example, Russia's economic production is greatly influenced by the vast gas reserves in the Arctic area and the huge oil resources of Siberia. But there's a drawback to this abundance. Russia leads developed nations' charts of wealth disparity because of its lack of economic diversification, while producing billionaires inside its borders. Consider the oligarchs, who've made enormous fortunes from their oil and gas businesses, while vast swaths of the populace live in impoverished rural areas with little options for employment other than resource exploitation and struggle to make ends meet. Furthermore, Russia's reliance on natural resources makes it open to economic sabotage and foreign influence. Russia has fiercely fought renewable energy programs in the West in order to protect its interests. It even backs campaigns meant to undermine renewable energy initiatives. Germany, which is largely dependent on Russian energy supplies, is also involved in this drive for energy domination. Because of this dependence, Germany is essentially powerless, as seen by its unwillingness to hold Russia accountable for its actions in Ukraine, and by its hesitation to back a total embargo on Russian energy imports out of concern for the impact on its own economy. It took Russia 2 years to recover from the financial crisis of 2014 to 2016, during which significant amounts of money exited the Russian economy as investors lost faith in the ruble. However, what was once merely an economic crisis has now escalated into a full-blown catastrophe, with repercussions that will linger for years to come. In an attempt to exert greater control over the economy, Putin has spent the last 2 decades transforming Russia's fledgling market economy into a Soviet-style command economy. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and this adage holds true even when those tricks are clearly ineffective. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment and subscribe to the channel and like the video. In 2003, Putin set his sights on Yukos, Russia's largest oil company, which accounted for 20% of the country's oil production at its peak. Putin devised a scheme to seize direct control of the company. Initially, fake tax bills were fabricated, alleging that Yukos had evaded paying $27 billion in taxes, an impossible sum for the company to settle. This served Putin's purpose perfectly, as he then ordered a freeze on all of Yukos' assets and initiated the seizure of the company's assets by the government to cover the purported tax debt. Those assets were then sold at rock-bottom prices to state-owned companies, which promptly utilized them under Putin's close supervision. For instance, valuable infrastructure, such as oil refineries and pipelines, were acquired for a fraction of their actual worth, allowing these state-owned enterprises to bolster their operations significantly. Take the example of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was arrested on charges of fraud and sentenced to a decade behind bars. Following his release, Khodorkovsky fled the country, becoming one of Putin's most vocal critics. This sent a clear message to other oligarchs: toe the line or risk losing everything to Putin's iron grip. Rosneft and Gazprom emerged as dominant forces in the energy sector, with Putin having free reign over their immense profits. The revenue generated by these state-owned giants lined Putin's pockets to an undisclosed extent, possibly making him the wealthiest individual on the planet. Meanwhile, Putin utilized these companies to finance kickbacks for his allies within the Russian security apparatus. The dreaded Russian security services now worked directly for Putin, and Putin's friends were paid millions of dollars. He had a lot of power because of this, and he used Russia's security forces for many things, like spying on, scaring, or even killing political opponents or critics. People who tried to stand up to Putin's authoritarian ways were probably already under his control or soon would be under the threat of being forced to do something or killed. Putin tightened his grip on Russia's economy, especially in important areas like energy. Entrepreneurs who agreed with his plans were able to start great businesses, such as Novatek and Sibur. But people who didn't follow Putin's orders had a hard time doing business in Russia because it was very bureaucratic and crooked. This made foreign companies less likely to come, which made the economy's problems worse. Following the financial chaos of 2014 to 2016, Putin stepped up his attempts to strengthen his economic position. When an independent business reached a certain level of success, the government put pressure on them to sell. Magnit, one of Russia's biggest grocery stores, felt forced to sell to the government. Its founder, Sergei Galitsky, gave up most of the company's shares in exchange for a big payment of $2.5 billion. Some gave in to Putin's requests, but others were in danger of being sent away or jailed on false charges. Even though the Kremlin had tight control over the economy, small and medium-sized businesses could still do well, but they had to be careful. Since Russia and the West generally have good diplomatic ties, many Western companies, such as Nestle, IKEA, H&M, and Adidas, jumped at the chance to sell to Russia's growing middle class, which helped the country's economy grow. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine has triggered an unprecedented departure of foreign businesses, resulting in an estimated loss of $200 billion to the Russian economy. Major brands, such as Nestle, British American Tobacco, and Philip Morris have ceased or scaled back their operations in Russia. For instance, Nestle halted the sale of most of its imported goods, while British American Tobacco completely exited the Russian market. Additionally, TJX, H&M, Nike, and Adidas have suspended sales in Russia, including popular items like tracksuits. Furthermore, significant foreign players in the Russian financial sector have withdrawn, exacerbating the economic impact. Societe Generale's sale in its stake of Rosbank led to a $3.3 billion loss for Russian lenders, while Deutsche Bank is winding down its operations in Russia. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase followed suit, severing ties with Russia. Moreover, American Express, MasterCard, and Visa's decision to restrict card usage outside of Russia has further crippled Russian travelers. The exodus of foreign businesses has resulted in the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs and driven unemployment to over 9%, up from a record low in March. With retail sales plummeting by 10%, The Russian government has allocated 39 billion rubles, or $466 million, for emergency benefits, temporary employment, and public works projects to mitigate the economic fallout. While this strategy mirrors efforts undertaken by the United States during the 2008 financial crisis, the long-term impact remains uncertain. With only $466 million allocated for a population of 144 million, Russia faces a dire financial situation, worsened by the departure of foreign investment and businesses. To counter the impact of Western businesses leaving, the Kremlin has seized control of many formerly foreign-operated enterprises. McDonald's outlets are slated to be replaced by a state-owned restaurant chain called Uncle Vanya's, disregarding intellectual property rights. However, this approach may falter due to the limited resources resulting from frozen foreign reserves. Moreover, simply substituting foreign-run businesses with local equivalents overlooks crucial factors like expertise and brand loyalty. The government's disregard for intellectual property rights also deters future foreign investment, hindering Russia's prospects for modernization and innovation. The Russian economy is projected to shrink by 11% over the next year, signaling a return to Soviet-era economic struggles. The exodus of skilled individuals exacerbates this decline, particularly in STEM fields, further dimming Russia's economic outlook. Unless Putin changes course and gains global forgiveness for the Ukraine invasion, Russia is poised to become economically isolated. Western sanctions targeting Russia's energy sector, its economic cornerstone, will accelerate its decline, despite potential energy trade with Asian nations like India. In essence, Russia faces a bleak future as a second-tier European nation, with its economy dependent on a shrinking energy sector and limited avenues for growth. So what are your thoughts? Do let me know in the comments section below. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more updates. And do watch our video on the new map by Putin.